So, thank you, everyone. I am very, very excited to be welcoming Brandy Jordan, who's the concept alchemist at High Rock Accounting. Today, she'll be speaking to us about bringing the entrepreneurial spirit to work, which is especially timely given that we're living in an age when it's adaptability, innovation, and just keeping up with everything that's going on around us. Before I turn it over to her, she will introduce herself. I just wanted to go through a few housekeeping items. If Please do put your comments in chat. The way this will go is we'll begin with a short presentation following the introduction, where Brandy will share what the mindset is and some tips with us. And then we will follow up with some prepared questions, which is a combination of what we received from the audience, as well as some additional questions to give us more information on this topic. This is being recorded. You will get an email with the rewatch afterwards. You will also see it on the Power to Fly platform and on YouTube. If you want to remain completely anonymous, as in not showing up in chat, you can send it as a DM with your comments. Those will remain anonymous. Otherwise, anything that you put in will show up in our recording. And if you want to play this afterwards on YouTube, if you don't want to wait for a few days or so, please do head on over there and make sure you subscribe, because that way you'll get notification on all of the other events from Power to Fly. And we are on social media, so please do follow us at Power to Fly. We are on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, as well as LinkedIn. So I will now turn it over to Brandy to tell us a little bit about herself.
Yay, favorite topic. I mean, not really, but we'll go with it. Again, my name is Brandy Jordan, self-proclaimed Jane of all trades, but am currently working as a concept alchemist for High Rock Accounting, and I am the architect for the Nucleus program. I do receive many comments regarding my job title, but in short, I basically work for a serial entrepreneur, and my role is to bring her ideas to life, which is actually a pretty great role for me because I have this insatiable need to drown myself in work, but not really. I do need to constantly challenge myself, though, continuously learn new things. And even throughout my varied career, one thing that has remained the same is my true enjoyment in helping individuals be better. I mean, there's nothing more beautiful or perfect than that moment when you see the light bulb go off and everything starts to click. And so my current project with Nucleus helps foster that a lot. I mean, we're taking accountants that are stuck in a traditional firm life and teaching them to be entrepreneurs. So it's amazing to watch as individuals start not only learning, but seeing the possibilities. So I'm really excited to talk through some of these key points for fostering this mindset with you. And if you want to we can go on the first slide.
Awesome. I think here you are. Okay.
Fantastic. So I wanted to put a baseline here. Let's define the term entrepreneurial mindset. And in its simplest form, it's this constant need to continually improve, to learn, and take action where you are challenging the status quo. You're never settling. It's this mindset that facilitates the ability to identify and make the most of opportunities, and also to overcome and learn from setbacks and failures, because as we're going to discuss later, I mean, failures are going to happen. But the more you learn to do that, the more you start to succeed in a variety of situations. If you want to change the slides up. So where is the value in bringing that mindset to the workplace? The main benefit is change. Without change, the work environment becomes stale and loses its ability to adapt to new opportunities. We know change can be difficult, but it is also tremendously beneficial. If people are just doing the same thing over and over, they never learn new skills. If you change it up, though, start trying new things, you learn to develop or even master new skills and duties, which leads you to be a more well-rounded individual. Who doesn't want that? Change also can bring about innovation. Ideally, businesses and individuals alike should be able to move and adapt fluidly. But when you create a rigid environment that starts to hinder those new ideas from cropping up, you can find yourself falling behind the curve and losing ground with competitors and those around you. So change helps recognize and value those individuals that continuously look and develop new approaches and strategies that they face. The entrepreneurial mindset also helps foster personal growth. And that's something I mentioned earlier. If you only do what's required, not only does your team become stagnant, but you do as well. I mean, even I've been in a role in the past where I was so efficient and productive that I ended up with a lot of time on my hands. So much so that at one place I started a completely separate business on the side because I had the time. But I tend to be one that can simply get more done in less time. And I know I'm not the only one like that. But instead of like encouraging people to work a little slower or maybe take more breaks, because normally if you're that efficient, you get more work just piled on top of you. You start to take on more challenging assignments, learn something new, take on opportunities, and add to your own personal growth, which will then help the workplace as a whole. One other thing that entrepreneurs are is resourceful, and they're always networking. I can't stop networking. Every relationship for me is a new opportunity. And this doesn't mean that you have to go to events or walk up to complete strangers, even though I'm not against that by all means. But at work, you can take this concept from just socializing with people at work to creating strategic partnerships. This is that learning more from different departments or building a network for future opportunities. You start to exchange information on different challenges and experiences and goals, insights that you might not have otherwise had, and then broadening your perspective and knowledge base. One of the things that I used to do in a previous role is what's called a meet to. And basically, I would randomly pick people from different departments doing different things, or even doing a role similar to mine, but in a completely different country. And I would just put time on their calendar and I would take the time to meet with them and learn what they do, the things they like, the projects they have coming down the pipeline, and see if there were things that I could help with or join in on, and vice versa. I mean, you don't always have to go to events in order to network. Sometimes you just need to step up and take a little bit of initiative. If you want to change the slide. So how do you actually start to work towards this entrepreneurial mindset? My first recommendation is to build your self-confidence and ownership. And you're going to have to become a friend to failure, because in order to succeed, you are going to fail. It's just going to happen. But the trick is to not turn those failures into a negative. Instead, let's turn them into the learning opportunities that they actually are. Even here internally at High Rock, one of our values is to fail and learn. We have a Slack channel where some of us will air out our failures, some of them more epic than others, but also what we've learned from it and how this opportunity has grown and what we are going to do to change moving forward because of it. We embrace these because it means that we took a chance to try something new and different. The next is to foster creativity. Creativity is all about the mental process involved in the discovery of new ideas. You're putting existing ideas into new combinations. And this can lead to new team members working with each other who normally wouldn't. And by thinking creatively or outside the box, people are more likely to come up with unique and innovative solutions to various obstacles and situations. It even creates an eagerness to go and solve the problems because you get excited, which turns into producing more efficiencies and new ways to accomplish what needs to be done. And then my final one is my favorite: never stop being curious. Like, I even have a bracelet that has that engraved in it. Curiosity is just invaluable for uncovering those unexpected solutions. There's even been research that highlights the importance of creativity to overall company performance. And cultivating curiosity just kind of leads to a higher ability for adaptation as conditions begin to vary. You start to think innovatively to arrive to these more innovative solutions. You start to lose that confirmation bias, which just means that you're more likely at that point to start looking for information that supports your ideas rather than the information that's going to go and prove them wrong. So this also leads to another topic I've been reaching into, which is a beginner's mindset, and it leads in, but we can leave that for another chat actually. So
I noted it down.
I know for future reference. So, but we can tackle some of these questions you guys have.
Sure. And then let me stop sharing and I'll share my questions. All right. All right. So thank you very much. The first question that came is, how important is preparation in innovation?
It's funny because like thinking about preparing for innovation can seem contradictory. I mean, that's the whole idea, this free flow of conversation. It doesn't feel very spontaneous, if you will, but it's not, because while innovation is about what's new and different, never done before. It is also about preparation. So we can take this, let's look at this from a simple brainstorming concept. If you just start brainstorming ideas without preparation, you can actually start diverting your attention rather than focusing in. And while you can brainstorm more ideas, preparation also helps to seek selective, more creative ones. So that prep for innovation kind of helps you hone in, if you will. You can also compare this to hackathons. You choose an idea and then become creative and innovative while being focused and tuned in on that particular solution that you're aiming for.
And are there things that make innovation difficult? And if so, what are some of those challenges?
Oh, there's always challenges. Anytime you want to start and change things up, somebody's going to have a problem. But it's because change in and of itself is difficult, no matter the situation. There tends to be a focus on making these small, steady, incremental improvements in different parts of a business because there's less risk, right? It's more predictable. But because nothing in this life is immune to change, it's worth exploring for disruptive innovations. The challenge is that those involve higher risk. They can't be managed the same way as a regular project. Innovation by itself can really be standardized, if you will. Another factor is there can be a lack of skill. Like maybe where you're at, there's just people without the skill or the talent or the ability to even execute on these ideas. So innovation is about finding new ways to create more value. And to do that, you need to have talented people who have these various skill sets to achieve it. And what those skill sets are going to be are going to vary on what you're trying to do or what business you may be in. But some standard skill sets that we can kind of keep in mind to help foster innovation would be like empathy, design thinking, and certainly a technology understanding. I mean, that's where there's so much innovation happening within technology now. But there, again, to what we were just talking about, you might have the right people. They're capable of creative problem solving and ideation, but they're not given the resources or even the freedom to execute it. So that means your culture can become a hindrance to it. So you have to, at minimum, have an acceptance to both change and risk and a lack of a plan in place to deal with those objections. Impatience, even change doesn't happen overnight, and that process can seem to take forever. So creating a culture of innovation requires leadership to not only shift their mindset, but act in a way that reflects these values. And that leads to another one where there's times where leadership can fail to provide the support. And this can happen when innovation is not a priority for them. So unless they're actively taking time to go in and remove the things standing in the way of innovation, progress is going to be difficult. So leaders need to set that expectation or the objectives and then give their team the freedom to say, hey, here, go, explore, find ways to achieve what you need to achieve.
Which actually segues nicely into our next question. And this one is near and dear to my heart because I have worked in some departments where this is the way we've always done it and this is the way it'll go. And so, how do we navigate that type of environment? Do you have any tips on how we can bring management on board to create an innovative environment?
Yeah, I think I hear a lot of that within the accounting industry too. It's like the Sally term, same as last year. We're just going to keep doing it the same, right? And it's unfortunate that there are still work environments that are not embracing change or innovation, much less giving them the freedom to even be heard, in an open and honest manner. So one thing though you want to avoid in these types of environments is going in and just start imposing your idea as if it's the only best idea. You got to have some tact. But using the power of persuasion, you can help expose a problem, a situation, or an area of opportunity, and then propose a solution that shows how everyone benefits from it. To help your ideas to gain traction, you start by using examples of how other similar organizations have done something, and the different approaches that they've taken and how it's worked out. But being able to pull clear, reliable data goes far in these type of workplaces. Like the more metrics you gather, such as the time saved, the resources freed up, the better reception you're going to get to your innovative idea. So anytime that you're trying to approach in an environment that's not supporting it, you want to make clear who's going to benefit and why, and focus on those cold, hard facts, because once you get the ball rolling and they start to see it, the rest of the doors will start to open up.
It becomes infectious, you say.
Yes.
Okay. Now, this is, Tom, what is an innovation strategy and how do you create one?
Funny because innovation is like about creating new value, and then strategy is the plan that supports that competitive goal. But innovation strategy is not about innovation tactics, but more about creating that explicit roadmap for the desired future. Because you don't want to innovate just for the sake of innovating. Rather, it should contribute to the larger overarching goal. So, in order to actually create an innovation strategy, you need to first be clear about your ambitions, define what your goals are, put into words why you want to innovate this in the first place. And then next, take a hard look about where you are now. What is your current innovation capabilities? Do you have leadership support? What resources will be able to help you in your strategy? You can start identifying the areas that you need to kind of maybe fill in some of those resources. But then you also need to make that innovation strategy actionable, because this strategy should connect the high level corporate mission and vision with the day-to-day stuff that you and your team are doing, and then identify who's responsible for making these things happen. Because if you're looking at the strategy, maybe you're not the one, but maybe this other person who's in it and has this great idea should be.
And then for the audience, if you have any comments or follow-up questions to any comments that Brandy made, please feel free to drop them in the chat and I can share them with Brandy. Great information so far. Thank you. And then the next question has to do with how do we attract people with an entrepreneurial spirit? So that could be whether we're interviewing or creating a culture where employees of that nature want to come to that company.
Mm-hmm. You go unicorn hunting. What I call it. You're basically trying to find the people that challenge the norm, right? They have original opinions. They act with tenacity and determination. But to start with, you can make it obvious that you're even looking for them. Use your hiring brand to showcase your desire to work with those that have this entrepreneurial spirit, and showcase how you foster growth in individuals that do. People want to be in that environment. So if they start to feel that from you from the very beginning, they're going to want to start the process, right? So one of the things that we do here is we try and craft our job descriptions in a way that helps a potential new hire self-identify with us. We have a whole section on them. It's like, does this sound like you? And have things like, you are fundamentally curious. You like to stay ahead of the curve. You see challenges as opportunities. But what you want to do is you want to show that your organization invests in its employees and gives them the freedom to take risk and to try new things. And then that interview part is the other opportunity to talk about like your company's desire to work with those who have that spirit, and also to gauge their strengths in those areas, because people can say that they have whatever they want, but you want to ask questions about their drive and their ambition. How are they measuring their success? What amazing things have they accomplished independently? Take that dive into their goals, those different situations that highlight their problem solving and leadership skills. And then when you ask questions that focus on this mindset, you're actually also priming them to associate those qualities with what your company values are.
I do have a follow-up question from Trevor. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Do you think people feel intimidated by innovation because they think it has to involve big changes?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the biggest fear factor. And I think that's why a lot of people don't. There's this wall. They're like, I'm not creative enough. I'm not curious enough. I'm not smart enough. Or if I do this, I'm going to cause all kinds of changes. And then they get overwhelmed because they're looking at the problem, right? And you have to look at innovation as like more solutions focused. If you start looking, what about the what if on a good way? What if it worked? What if I did this and this change happened? How is that going to benefit? But people actually do get intimidated, and I think it's because we get lost in our own heads instead of taking a leap. It's that risk factor. Dive in, do it.
You brought up an excellent point, and the reason I mentioned that is I'm in the project management arena, and even I myself have to remind that risk is not always a bad thing.
Exactly.
There is good risk, there's bad risk, and you have to weigh your cons and pros and cons. So it's something that when I was studying for my certification, I brought up over and over, but putting it into practice, I have to catch myself.
Mm-hmm.
It can be positive, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. So.
Absolutely. I do it too. I can get stuck in it, but yeah, it's a work in progress, and that's okay.
Yes. And piggybacking off Trevor's question, in a way, the next question was, what are some simple ways we can start implementing innovative ways at work? What tricks do you use to think outside the box?
Ah, I just do. No, I'm kidding. um, One of the things I love the most is to surround myself with inspiration as a start, right? Like my work area is full of little things that kind of inspire me. Like I have my little Lego pencil holder or, whatever it is that captures your attention, like put it on display. Or if you can't do it physically, have like a virtual Pinterest board or whatever, but put things in front of you that foster that inspiration, right? And another is to start learning from these mistakes. Like we're just talking about, these are going to happen because before innovation can occur, mistakes happen, and that's okay. Just learn and try something different and shift your focus, like I was saying, from those possibilities of what could be rather than what hasn't worked. Strive for those process improvements because not all innovation has to be something completely new. It doesn't have to be this grand schema that you come up with that innovates everything. It could be just a simple change on how something is done and be the most effective, which leads into keeping it simple. Some place, like I just said, think maybe offering more features or services is the way to innovate. And while that's not necessarily wrong, it's not the only way. Sometimes simplifying how you're offering a service is the innovation start that you need to get going. As far as ways I think outside of the box, um, I try to adopt that beginner's mindset I mentioned earlier, where I approach each challenge as something new and novel rather than letting experience and knowledge blind me to new ideas that could solve difficult problems. Like I also am constantly in a state of learning. I attend webinars on all kinds of topics, no matter the industry, because many problems in other industries are similar to yours, and maybe they've developed a new way to approach them. And also just never be afraid to ask why. I question things all the time. But I do it as a way to understand in order to kind of learn the best avenue for innovation.
Thank you. And the audience, please continue to put your comments or questions for Brandy in the chat. The next one, innovative strategies sometimes go wrong.
To start, some of those don't consider the long term, right? Because it's easy to consider short term goals. But, focusing only on achieving those short term goals can cause allocations of resources that end up getting depleted quickly. So you have to look at the mindset within your company. So team members should have an innovative mindset to create something new and then thereby solving whatever innovation problem. The culture for this mindset has to be cultivated within the organization itself, starting at the top and then permeating into every level of the organizations. Companies need to boost that creativity, brainstorm new ideas, nurture their teams to go one step beyond and start that thinking outside of the box. But there's that fear of failure. You spend all this time and money only to come up short on intended goals, and this can lead to the process of being more afraid to fail than to even try something new. But it's also worth noting, like, it's going to take more than one person. Like, one person can't just innovate alone. You need a team that's fully behind and supporting this, or the innovation will fail. Innovation requires the involvement and investment into the individuals and teams. So you need to support your team too with the tools to generate and evaluate ideas clearly, facilitate these meetings and collaboration efforts, motivating your teams to help bring about better innovation ideas and new insights, better outcomes. You got somebody needs to take that first step.
And you mentioned fear of failure, and I was reading this article, and I think as a culture we've placed a great emphasis on being perfect, and that fear of perfection leads to different things: procrastination, fear of trying something new because we're just afraid to fail.
Exactly.
The next question, and this is an interesting one, and I think earlier you were talking about understanding whether that innovation has gone well. Are there ways to measure innovation? And this one is a curiosity question for me, because for me, innovation is spontaneity. It's doing something new that's never been done before. So I would love to know if there's actually a way to measure it.
I'm pretty sure we could put KPIs or ROI on anything at some point. But it's important though, if that's what you need to kind of start measuring those successes, it's important to choose the most appropriate ones for your goals. So like some examples could be to consider like the number of new ideas that were proposed, how many of those were selected for implementation, the number of unsuccessful projects, because if you're failing, you're still learning. It's still a good measurable goal in the right direction. How fast these ideas are becoming a reality, the revenue generated from new ideas or from new client reactions, or even like getting your client reactions, like what do they think of this stuff? And then, of course, the lessons learned through the innovation process. Like those are good key areas to start measuring. But to caveat that, there can be challenges in measuring the innovation. And, like you mentioned, especially when taking into consideration that all the aspects of strategic innovation and they're not just financial outcomes, right? But the other thing too, to play devil's advocate on this question, is that only focusing on KPIs can actually defeat the purpose of an innovation mindset. So you want to create that freedom to explore. But if you put too much emphasis on the results and statistics, you can actually run the risk of stifling that innovation. So there is the benefit of, and be cautious of what you're measuring so you can actually see what's happening, but don't put that pressure that it has to meet these certain goals or you're going to kill the creativity behind it.
And I'm glad you said that, because that was my thought, that people might either try to beat the metrics or do something, and then it defeats the purpose of no fear environment.
Right, especially if you're competitive like me, you put a number, I'll beat it. Got it.
Exceed it. And then audience, any questions that you have? Let me make sure I didn't miss something in chat. I should start at this Q&A area as well. So let me put that in. Okay. All right. Okay, continue putting your comments and questions. We have one more, which is how do we encourage good ideas and reduce bad ones without discouraging innovative ideas?
There's no bad ideas, but yet there are bad ideas. So as we've been discussing, I mean, there is far more to success than just the idea, which is it's an innovator's dilemma. When you're doing something new, you're not always able to tell good ideas from the bad ones ahead of time. The best ideas often challenge conventional ways of thinking, even though they seemed completely ridiculous in the beginning. I mean, you think back 10 years ago, the thought of getting into a stranger's car and have them take you to a destination seemed like the beginning of a horror movie. But right now, Lyft and Uber are like common everyday services. It's the new norm, to not use it in pandemic related to ways. But to be innovative, you need plenty of ideas. So don't worry too much about getting bad ideas, because you want everybody to have that freedom to think for themselves, voice their ideas about any important problems or opportunities that they discover, and help foster an environment where it's safe to do so, like that psychological safe place to share and collaborate. The key would be placing an emphasis on talking about the problem or opportunity that their ideas are addressing. Because while the raw ideas are far from perfect, people will come up with an idea for a reason. And sometimes the bad ideas help accelerate learning, and you end up discovering something new or important about your organization in the process. And to that, if you end up with all these ideas, then what do you do with them? You need some sort of like management process for them. So it's good to kind of focus on prioritizing ideas based on what the problem or opportunity is addressing, rather than the idea itself. If this is the real problem, we have these crazy ideas that are actually on that, then let's pilot some solutions for those most promising ones. And even then, you can use that as a tool to help empower your team members by giving them the go ahead to test run those ideas and see what happens.
Those were the last of our questions. Is there any question from the audience in comments? I'll give them a few minutes, and then I was hoping you could summarize for us if the top 3 takeaways as people are going back. So if we were to go back, but let me make sure there's no questions.
Yeah, okay. You're fine.
So what would be your top 3-4 tips for anybody that's looking to go back to work and start to get into that mindset and start implementing? And I would almost say finding the passion again, because I do think when there's no innovation, you lose your passion for that job. So,
Mhm.
what would be your three top tips for us?
I really love the idea of staying curious, because if you can come in with this fresh, like open mindset, like get out of your own way of thinking that you know everything and just approach things as if they're new and novel, and just sometimes things just start to happen, right? You just start to think like, oh wait, I never thought to do that, and so, and then start the conversation would be my next thing. Is it's not going to happen if you're the only one sitting there and you're not doing anything about it. Start the conversation, and help empower others. Like, hey, what's your idea? What's your idea? What do you think of this? What would be a solution here? And then to get people to help start that mindset, but start small. Maybe there's that one, that would be it. Let's do those three. Stay curious, um, start the conversation, and start small. Keep it simple. Maybe there's that one process that irritates everybody at your job, and maybe you can do something that would kind of innovate that little thing, and then you have a good ROI, and it starts that, okay, well, she fixed that. What's the next thing that we could do?
And then the confidence builds from there as we
Mm-hmm.
go through.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Okay. Um, Thank you so much, Brandy. And then I'll give one more opportunity to the audience to see if
Mm-hmm.
there are any
Absolutely.
questions. Let's give them a few minutes. Our team, does anybody have a question for Brandy? Feel free to use the chat. Okay. Um, so this is an interesting question from Treva. Thank you. Have you always been curious, or have you worked to become curious?
So I am like a walking hypocrite. I am the judgiest person on the planet, but I'm also the most curious, and I want to learn and know everything about everything. Like I can't stop it. And I feel like I've always been that curious, but I wasn't always in environments that allowed that to happen. And so as I've gone through my career and I've, kind of come into my own, if you will, I just have embraced that side of me. I'm like, I want to learn, I'm going to know. And I'm just, I don't need to be told, I'm just going to start asking and talking to people. I'm going to be like, oh, that sounds interesting. I'm just going to go learn. So I have like this insatiable desire to soak up everything, which makes me really good at trivia, by the way. But because I know the most random things. But yeah, I think I've always been curious. It's just throughout my life, slowly I've been in more and more environments that allowed me to embrace that part of me.
And you mentioned earlier that you're one of those that likes to go to different webinars and learning. And are there any specific, how should I say, forums that you recommend? And by that, I mean, sometimes people will say, you don't realize Udemy has the best courses, or Coursera or something. So, or LinkedIn webinars, I don't know. So,
Mm-hmm.
do you have any favorite places we can follow to see what's the latest and greatest?
Latest and greatest.
Or is it?
Now you caught me.
And if you don't, that's okay. In case you
Yeah,
had a recommendation of some things that.
it's also hard because everything I have is like, it's so varied, right? So I have like about 12 different Slack workspaces, and only one of them is for my job. I am in like all these other groups. So whether it's like an HR group or a design group or a learning group, because there's other people talking about different things, and sometimes I'll get um, an idea or a question. I'm like, ooh, let me pose it in one of these other groups and see what they say. Or I see other conversations happening and be like, hey, wait, I have an idea. And then I also like listen to so many different podcasts from like Science Versus, which has nothing to do with work, to, leadership and development. And just to try and make sure to stay ahead of that. The other cool thing too is if you're starting on new initiatives, like find a group, find a podcast, find a webinar that's talking about that. See what people have already done. And then usually when you start that, there's this weird networking that happens. Like because they always send a follow-up email, right? Like, hey, learn more here. Hey, there's this group. Hey, there's that group. I'm one of those people that start clicking on it and seeing, hey, is there anything cool here? Is this something I want to be a part of? So it's just a matter of like, just say yes and start clicking on the things.
And actually, that's a great idea. I'm on Slack. I just started using it though, so
Ah.
Trying
I
to figure
mean,
it all out.
it's good and bad. It's a never-ending tree of stuff. I also have a Discord, which is another like server similar to Slack, but for that I have all of my design groups on there, so when I need like feedback for like stuff I'm doing in Illustrator or Photoshop or like whatever the case may be, or ideas on branding and other that, I have a whole nother group for that all on there. So it's about finding those things that you're interested in and just type in Google, and it's amazing what you can find, because that's really what I do. I'm a really good Googler.
Google is our friend.
Yeah.
So any other questions from our audience? Let me give them a minute.
Yeah, not a problem.
And just as an advance heads up, Brandy will be back in July to talk about design thinking. And so you'll hear more about it on Power to Fly and some other topics. So we will be the direct recipients of her curious personality. So, yes, and Raphael said, "This is all great information, Brandy. Thank you." So
You are
I
quite
agree.
welcome.
And thank you because you've taken the mystery out of innovation. To the gentleman who asked the question, when we think innovation, we always associate it with entrepreneurs. I know I do. Oh, entrepreneurs, and it's very good to know that the things you do, whether you realize it or not, are just as innovative, or if not, we can get into that innovative mindset.
Yeah, exactly. Because you don't have to go and build the next $1 million company to have an entrepreneur mindset. It's just changing how you're looking at things.
And this whole concept, and then for me, coming from the project management world, the agile philosophies and having it relates very well. So I need to go back to work and start implementing. So, but but thank you very much. It looks like we do not have other questions. So I will, but I do want to thank you, and I'm really excited about. So Trevor also said great information. Thank you for sharing. I agree completely. And I'm very excited because she'll be joining us again. We will also have a series of events from her. So do look out on the Power to Fly platform, where we will be building on some of the information that she's brought today and in other areas as well. So you're a wealth of information. So we appreciate your passion, your enthusiasm. Thank you very much. And then as a reminder, everyone, this was recorded. I'll turn off the recording in a minute. You will get a copy of the recording, or you can head on to Power to Fly or to YouTube to watch this. So, and we look forward to seeing you again in a future event with Brandy.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.
Everyone, thank you. Have a wonderful day. It's beautiful outside. So hopefully it's beautiful
Enjoy
wherever
that.
you are. Enjoy. So thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.